It's got a 97% with critics on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a leading 8 nominations at this year's Golden Globes, and it is now streaming on HBO Max. Let's talk about The Banshees of Inisherin. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new film, The Banshees of Inisherin. This is streaming right now on HBO Max. Just went up there, but maybe you caught it in theaters a couple of months ago. It may still be playing in some art houses as well. But I think we may expect another theatrical release in a month or two when the Oscar nominations come out, because I think it will be up for some of the major awards I already mentioned. It's up for a leading 8 nominations at this year's Golden Globes. The movie that comes closest only has 6 nominations, so this is beating it by 2. Obviously, a lot of love from the critics. We'll see how I feel about this in a moment here, but first I want to welcome you to Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do a lot of new movie and TV stuff here on the channel, but on occasion take some deep dives into some older movies as well, and that's always fun. But plenty of stuff to always check out on the channel here. Please consider subscribing down below, or just like this video, comment. All that stuff helps the channel out, and we love to see it. So let's talk about this movie. This first came into my consciousness, I should say, with Brendan Gleeson hosting Saturday Night Live a couple of months ago, because I thought that's sort of a weird pick. So I looked and I said, oh, okay, he has some movie coming out. So Colin Farrell, who co-stars with him in the film, actually, I guess is the lead in the film, right? Helped him out in the monologue a little bit, and I think maybe did a sketch as well. But this movie re-teams Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell with Martin McDonagh, the director. They were a part of his directorial debut, In Bruges, which is a movie. It sort of came and went. I think maybe it's a little bit of a cult hit. Like, I feel like the people that love that movie really love it, and it does get talked about in some circles, but it sort of came and went, I think, for the general population. But it was also nominated for many Golden Globes, in the best musical or comedy category. This one is as well. It's one of those tricky things with the Golden Globes, because some movies just aren't really funny that get nominated in the comedy category, like The Martian or American Hustle or The Tourist, or there's a whole list of them, really. My friend Tim and I always joke about it, but here I think the case could be made. It's not a straight ahead. I think In Bruges is more of an action comedy, I would say. This is a very, very dark comedy at best. Brendan Gleeson seems to be attracted to those types of movies. He did a great movie years ago called Calvary that was sort of listed as a dark comedy or a black comedy, and I mean, if you got some laughs out of that, God bless. It was an A+ of a movie, but I think comedy, I don't know. Here, there's definitely a bigger case to be made. I think there's some funny moments here, absolutely. Let me just read the nominees here for this movie, or the nominated categories. Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Director, Best Actor for Colin Farrell, Best Supporting Actor for Brendan Gleeson and Barry Keoghan, or Keoghan, and Best Supporting Actress for Carrie Condon, Best Screenplay, Martin McDonagh again, and then Best Original Score as well for Carter Burwell. So that's like almost all of the categories that the Golden Globes does for movies, because they don't, the Oscars does a lot of the really like more art specific categories, like art direction and sound and stuff like that. But Golden Globes really just, acting, directing, screenplay, that kind of stuff. And so this really has checked all of those boxes, and I would say rightfully so, but I think we're going to get into that here in a second. I guess let's talk a little bit about the plot here. It's the basic plot, without really giving too much away about how this unfolds, is that basically these are 2 lifelong friends who find themselves at a little bit of an impasse when the Brendan Gleeson character decides to abruptly end their relationship without much, conversation or any conversation, really, or explaining himself or anything. So as the movie goes on, we sort of get to some of the meat and potatoes of that. But anyway, this is, and I'll just, a brief spoiler for my grade, if not for the whole movie. I don't want to spoil the movie, but this is so far the best movie I've seen this year. Now maybe it's not my favorite, but my grade is, part my own personal enjoyment of a movie and part how I think, artistically it is reaching its goal and expressing itself. And this movie does that in spades. For one thing, it's one of the most original movies I've seen in a long time. When I heard the basic plot, I thought, well, you're going to stretch that plot into an hour and 55-minute movie. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And yet it does. It keeps sort of the layers of the story keep unfolding upon itself. And really, this is at its core a character study about these two men. I love a good character study movie. It reminds me a little bit of, if we're going to talk, Oscar caliber movies. This one, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves, won Best Picture, but Nomadland with Frances McDormand. This actually has, I think, a few things in common with that. I'm not saying it's really similar at all, but in terms of themes and just sort of character work and a pretty sparse cast overall, I think you could say that the two do have that in common. So let's talk about the cast, because they're all fantastic. All four of these leads and supports really do deserve the nominations at the Globes. Colin Farrell, I used to be a little hit or miss with him. I thought that phone booth movie was sort of silly or whatever. But, in the last, 6-7 years, he's been picking projects that I have just, well, really, maybe it started with In Bruges and then sort of went from there. That was probably 10 years ago. But, some other movies, Saving Mr. Banks, and he played in Dumbo, which, a completely new character to that story that was not in the cartoon, that I thought he did a great job with. And then Brendan Gleeson, I've been a fan of his for a long time. But I'll tell you what is interesting is that if it weren't for the absolute brute force of those two lead performances, I think of them both kind of as leads, even though I know Colin Farrell's technically the lead. But Barry Keoghan, I think, could have stolen every scene he's in, maybe with a worse lead actor or something other than Colin Farrell, because Farrell is so strong that Kehoe can't actually steal the scenes, but in anybody else's hands, I think maybe he could have, because he is so great in this. You might recognize him from Dunkirk. He's done, a few different things over the years, but I think maybe he's most recognizable from Dunkirk. But this takes place, by the way, in Ireland, if you didn't know that from the title, but in 1923, so right sort of at the end of the Civil War. That is sort of winding down, and there are a ton of sort of maybe some a little too on the nose, I don't know, but metaphors between what's going on with these two gentlemen and the war itself and the country and all of that at that time period. Maybe it's touched on a little too much, or maybe even a little too on the nose. Like I said, maybe some more subtlety might have done it better, but personally it worked for me very well, the way they handled it. In fact, I was almost looking for something to, it's too long, or maybe they should have done this. Honestly, it's a pretty great movie. So going back to the two leads, though, they play so well off each other. And of course, I think after In Bruges, they became sort of friends. And you could see it on SNL. It shines through here. The two, even when the Gleeson character is really trying to distance himself, they play off of each other so very well, and I think that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. But the supporting cast, like I said, great as well, and what a great sort of love letter to the area. The landscapes are gorgeous, the cinematography is gorgeous. There's a lot of beautiful shots here to look at. This is sort of like a postcard type of movie. You could take almost any frame in the movie, that's outdoors, certainly, and make it into a postcard. It's just beautiful to look at. And then, just like I mentioned briefly earlier, the layers of the story. It keeps sort of, and I wouldn't even say that there's, a lot of twists and turns necessarily, but just the way that these gentlemen are sort of unfolding their stuff, for lack of a better term, their S. I don't really curse on this channel, but they're really getting into the nitty gritty of themselves and each other. And I think this is a movie that if I had seen, 20 years ago when I was right out of college, I don't think it would have impacted me. I think there's a lot of movies like that. Sideways is a great example of that. My buddy Joe, when we watched that years ago for another video, had sort of pointed that out, that he had seen it 10 years earlier and he liked it, but, couldn't quite articulate why and stuff. And it had so much more meaning to him 10 years later when he was now in his 30s. And I feel the same way about this movie. I think if I watched it 20 years ago, if it was out then, it definitely would not have had the same impact as it does now. Because I think it brings up a lot of not questions, but things to think about in ourselves. Things to reflect upon, things to reach. And I think Nomadland did that too. So, there again, another maybe comparison with that movie. All right, well, look, I think I'm going to be talking about this movie a lot more come Oscar season. And certainly at the Golden Globes. But I do my Oscar video every year with my buddy Tim, where we talk about the who will win, who should win. Well, so far from the movies I've seen this year, I think this one should win. There's a lot that I haven't watched yet. The Fabelmans, I have not caught Everything Everywhere All at Once yet. The Whale with Brendan Fraser has yet to be released. So there's definitely some more coming out that could take this movie's place. But for now, from what I've seen in 2022, I think this one deserves to win it. So we'll see how it does at the Globes and then subsequently at the Oscars. But I will say right now, this is my #1 movie of the year. It is the first film I am giving an A+ to in 2022. Usually I get at least one by now over the summer or something, but it's been, a long year. I think I've only given maybe 6 or 7 A's even. But Banshees of Inisherin for sure gets an A+ from me. This is an excellent, excellent movie. Highly, highly recommended. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see everybody next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.